Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us right now, Mac Engel of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the Big Mac blog. Okay, dude, I got to ask you, did you really shave your head in honor of Breaking Bad's Walter White?
No, I did it.
Thank God.
I did it the other day just out of curiosity to see how it looked. I had talked about doing it forever.
So you did shave it, though?
I did, yeah, I did. I did. And if I had known... Two things. If I had known, it's kind of like having a cast on your arm.
Yeah.
Everybody asks you about it, and
then signs it.
Yeah, it signs my head. Signs my ugly head. Now everybody asks you about it, and after you tell a story 2 or 3 times, you're like, it's not that interesting. All they did was shave my head, but it's different and ha ha ha. But yeah, it took me about. I used a pair of clippers, and the first swipe I took, I immediately I was like, oh no, I got to do this now. And then about halfway through, the battery died. And I don't know if anybody who's done this before, I'm sure some listeners have. I had a lot of hair, so the battery on it died.
Not good.
And I thought, oh yeah. So I immediately went and charged it, and I took scissors to it. And then in the time that I was able to use the scissors, I was able to charge up enough of the battery to take another shot at the with the clippers, and then I took a wet razor to it. And then I saw what I looked like, and
congratulations.
If I had known my daughter, my 3-year-old daughter, was going to react the way she did, I would never have done it. She was really weirded out by it.
I grew some facial hair back when my son was very small. Just had at the time I was working in television, and I didn't have the mustache or the beard, and when I grew it, he hated it. He absolutely hated it. I mean, he was 2, 3 years old, and I mean, it just repulsed him. I was not dad. So did your kids scream and wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares and stuff?
No, she'd done that before, but not as it relates to my head. At least not yet. But she doesn't like it. I mean, she's used to it now because I think it's been about a week or 10 days.
Do you let her draw on it?
That's a good idea. But for the longest, she wouldn't touch it. But now when she says she sees it, she says I don't have hair. She says I have dots.
Dots. And what did your wife think about this idea?
She didn't like it. She had known for a while I was kicking around doing it, and she had said, I'm 39. She said, most 39-year-old men don't have hair like that. But, you're either losing it or you're hanging on. And she said, I think she said you toyed with the hair gods.
You did. Listen, man, people would kill for your head of hair,
and
me included.
And that's what she said. She said, you don't do that.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
I am, a little bit.
There are people out here like me who, have this partial scalp, okay? And we're dying for hair like you got, and you shaved yours, man. I don't even know you anymore. Just telling you.
Well, the thing, and I'm sure it's funny how many people don't recognize you initially.
That's kind of nice.
A lot of people don't recognize, and I really enjoyed that. But I'm glad I did it. I can say I did it, and I won't do it again.
Well, the good news for you is it probably will grow back like a chia pet now.
It is. I shaved it again on Saturday night, and I took it down to the scalp again and now it'll grow back fast. But I mean, Bryan, I'm a wolf. Right?
I know.
So I'm not going to really. I'm not.
It'll take you a week and a half.
Right. So it'll be back soon enough, and I'll be fighting it soon enough. But I'll say this: I really enjoy the low maintenance of it.
I bet. Yeah, this Lex Luthor, fixation you have. I guess I hope you enjoyed it. I'm glad.
Well, my daughter. I had read their children's book, the Dark Knight Rises thing, and
a children's book.
Yeah, no, it was. She thought I was Bane. I'm not kidding. That's true. She thought I was Bane.
Hey, and when you can find a place where you can get one of those masks, I want that.
Okay? Oh, they're not selling them.
That's
sick.
Funny you
say that. No, they're not selling them. They put a moratorium. They just now released it. They put a moratorium on all that stuff, but specifically that mask, because of the Colorado shooting.
Oh,
so
man.
I actually went on Saturday. I thought, this would be kind of a funny picture. I'll do this, but I couldn't even get one because they haven't really been released yet.
That's just wrong. Okay, well, whatever. All right, now then the other thing is, I see that you did a Q&A with Artie Lang. Okay, first of all, how did that come about? And then secondly, did he say anything that wasn't completely profane during the entire conversation?
You know, I'm gonna post it later in the day. I didn't know if you knew. Obviously, people who know Artie Lang probably knew him either through his stand-up stuff, but primarily his time on the Howard Stern show.
Well, I just finished looking at the Joe Buck interview again.
Well, and we talked about that, and he's great. I mean, he's a very honest guy, and he and stand-up comedian Nick DiPaolo now have their own sports talk show based out of, I think it's out of Hollywood, and it's on late at night. I think from like 9 to midnight, and it's getting ready to be picked up on satellite TV by like DirecTV. I think starting on the 7th. I think, and he sort of reinvented himself as a pop culture sports constant comedian, but a pop culture and sports talk guy.
Okay.
And so he and Nick DiPaolo have done this, and they had me on. I think they had me on. Their producer found something that I had written about, I don't even know, Terrell Owens or something, and they liked it, and they had me on, and we kind of just hit it off. And I told the producer I'd love to talk to Artie, and we kept trying to do it, and finally I talked to him last week, and I wanted to talk to him about one other thing. I wanted to talk to him about his career, Joe Buck, and the other thing I wanted to talk to him about was what it's like to be a drug addict, and that's totally sincere. And Artie is a recovering drug addict.
Right.
He's a recovering heroin addict.
Wow.
And I wanted to ask him about that as it related to Josh Hamilton. So the interview was twofold. I'll write a column about what he said about the kind of things that Josh might be experiencing and overcoming that, because Artie goes to meetings 4 times a week. And Bryan, and I'm sure you've come across this, when you interview entertainers, you expect the guy who's on the big screen, you expect the guy on stage, you expect the guy who's on the TV set to be right in front of you. And they are physically, but they're not on when they're talking to you. They're not in that mode when they're being interviewed. They're just talking to you. So when I interviewed Artie, and he and I were just chatting, and he's one of those guys you just talk to. You're not grilling him, you're just talking to him. Yeah, he can be a little profane, but he's just a guy, and a really nice, and ultimately a really nice, sincere guy, but he's also a stand-up comic. And when you're a stand-up comic, and he talked about that, your mission is the joke. And I asked him, I said, do you ever regret any of the things that you said? And he said, no, not as long as it was funny. He said, I do regret some of the things that I've said about people that I work with. But, we talked about that, and as it related to the Joe Buck thing, he told that story, and that story, it's so funny how that, he says, every time I do a stand-up, and he is a full-time stand-up comic still, he said, every time I do that show, people will say Joe Buck. And he said it was one of the best things that I did for my career. And he said what people don't understand is that Joe Buck asked him to do that.
Right.
Joe Buck, before he went out on stage of that show, said, "Let me have it." And he said what I didn't realize was, he said I didn't even know who Jason Sudeikis was. I'd never met him. I'd never seen him in my life. And he said he wasn't in that mode. He said Paul Rudd isn't a comic. He's an actor. And he said the problem was, he said they were just so boring. And he said, was I a little over the top? He said, I didn't recognize it until it was too late. And he said, it's lived on in infamy, and people make fun of it. And what people don't realize is that Joe Buck had Artie Lang come on that next episode of the show. They're good friends. Joe Buck wrote the foreword to his book that's coming out in November.
Wow.
So it's just this story that took off and grew legs in a direction that wasn't entirely accurate. Joe Buck harbored no ill will feelings towards Artie at all. They're still good friends. They still talk. It was what Joe wanted. It was the way it was perceived nationally and by the audience that had everybody up in arms.
Man, I never imagined this was going to turn into like Behind the Music. This is great. I like this. Okay, all right. I got to ask you about uniforms.
Well, before I say that, make sure read the interview.
Okay.
The Josh Hamilton stuff I kept for a later date, but when I posted today, it's a really interesting interview because he's not the guy. I mean, he is that guy, but just a regular guy.
Cool. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's cool you talked to him, so that's great. I got to ask you a couple of things. First of all, I got to ask you a TV thing. Did you get in on Breaking Bad from day one?
No, I didn't. I I was a DVD guy on that.
Okay, I'm just wondering. I don't, and see, and part of it is I've got a kid at home who's like 14, 15 years old, and so I gotta kind of filter some of these things and decide what is it we're going to get into and what we're not going to get into. And he's probably old enough to watch it now, but I know when it started, I didn't want him watching it, so I struggle with this, and then I'm just kind of wondering why is it I always miss these shows? How is it people get in on these things? And now you're telling me that's basically how I got into 24 years ago. Was I didn't watch the first season. I got it on DVD over the summer and got addicted to it, and then stayed with it. But I'm just kind of wondering how you got into it and then what hooked you.
Same way. I mean, it's. I mean, the content as the show's progressed, and people who watch it will tell you this. It's gotten considerably darker. It's gotten considerably more violent.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously language. It's just a language and violence thing. I mean, and obviously our acceptance of language and violence as media consumers has really changed over the last 20 years, really in the last 10, especially. But so as it relates to a 14-year-old, yeah, you were probably right. I would probably err to the side of caution on that one because it's very, very serious and adult nature. I mean, the guy's a meth dealer.
Right.
But as it relates to watching it, I was the same way. I mean, the way I caught 24, I'm late to all of them. I don't watch, with the exception of 30 Rock, I think.
Okay.
And I'm usually watching everything on DVR or DVD these days. Like Walking Dead, that's how I got hooked on Walking Dead. I wasn't watching Walking Dead as it went on. I was watching it on DVD, and then I caught up. And you get the first couple of seasons, you rent them or whatever, and you watch it, and then you catch up, and then you're current.
Okay.
And that's what I did with Breaking Bad. But it's a great show. That's what I did with The Wire. I never watched The Wire until 2 years after it was done. Then I got hooked on it through DVDs, and I'm sure I'm like everybody else. Then you become junkies on it. And you just sit there every night watching hour after hour after hour. And with The Wire, you want to kill yourself by the end of it. It's so sad.
It sounds like great entertainment.
Yeah, but Breaking Bad's a little lighter. I mean, Breaking Bad is fiction. The Wire was taken out of. The Wire was based on stories in the Baltimore police files.
Okay.
A lot of those people were based on real people or were real people.
You see,
The Wire is fiction, but it's fun. It's a fun, interesting, suspenseful TV show.
We see what my problem is I'm 55. Okay, so I just feel like I'm hopelessly out of touch with anybody that's under 40 years old, and that's why I'm thinking, okay, am I just missing this stuff? Because I like good TV too, but it's just kind of like, okay, where have I been?
I'm the same way, and it gets worse, and I'm sure you're in your 50s, so I'm not quite 40 yet, but I'm right there. It just gets worse when you get older.
Well, but see, what's going to happen with you is what's happening with me right now. It gets worse when you get older because then your kid starts looking at you like you're an idiot all the time. They give you this look.
They're not wrong.
Yeah, no, they're not wrong. They're totally, but they give you this look, and it's like, okay, I'm going to go back in my room now. I don't even want to talk to you anymore.
You watch your crap, and I'll watch my crap.
Exactly, and you listen to your crap, and I'll listen to my old crap. That's how how it works.
Absolutely, and and I can see it. I was teaching a class at TCU a couple years ago, and these guys, a student was saying, he's like, yeah, I'm going to go see these bands this weekend. And I said, oh, who? And he rips off a bunch of names. I'd never heard of any of them. And I'm sure that's happened to anybody my age or anybody 30 and up. You're like, I have no clue who you're talking about. So instead, I'll go to the safe haven that is an REO concert.
Thank you very much. Hey, do you mind if we extend this just a few minutes?
No, if you need to, sure.
What we're going to do, I'm going to take a time out, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back like next hour and actually talk a few minutes of sports. But we got Mac Engel from on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM. Here's Craig with a sports flash.